all the features you want on release, but here's our plan. I mean, I don't run a multi-badrillion, grillion dollar company, so I'm just, I'm a nerd who likes his comic books. But yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned about it, really. So that's pretty much my stance on it. Not a failure of the production and of the people making the game, but more of a failure of the communication avenues, so I'm not too stressed about it. For now, I'm just going to enjoy clicking my buttons. And of course, I use alternate communication methods to get a hold of my buddies. So, that's that. I did it, guys. Aren't I awesome? Whew, so concise. So, of course, more stomping in action. Look at how hard it is for Maka to penetrate into this area. He just cannot pierce this defense because it's a nice wide arc. I mean, even I'm just going to back up here when the Hellions made a little bit of sacrificial action here. Back up even more, right when this attack was first happening. Yeah, I bet you're going to try to get through this area. This is just begging to be stormed. One storm pretty much eats up this entire lane. So, I mean, I really love throwing storms down right there. So it's going to be incredibly difficult for either player to poke in, but again, I think the big misstep by Maka, not doing spotting with this medevac. You can always poke around the outside edge, whether it be with an SCV or with a medevac, but if the medevac's there, great idea to use it. And look at more abuse that can be done in the center area. Oh, see you later. Taking out these assimilators. Very, very tough thing to defend against, to be entirely honest. This is why a lot of people just despise playing on this map. And what is White-ra doing? White-ra is so good at this. This actually makes it very stressful to play against White-ra because he's just always dropping. Like, the more pressure he's under with this sort of stuff, the more likely he is to be dropping you at that point in time. And here he comes, flying right over here. Again, you pretty much need a turret up top and a turret to the left here. And here comes the monies. Nothing. Oh, the money's... Oh, will he get it? Oh, that was very good. Oh, look, there are not many SCVs at all. Just go to the unit counting station, 20 SCVs to 43 probes. My goodness. Interesting to note, though, it does look like Maka is ahead 20 food to White-ra, but, again, has fewer workers. So, in a sense, Maka's army is 40 food bigger than White-ra's. But look, this position is so easy to defend. Have the heavy hitters in the front, the ones that can take a lot of damage, with stormers in the back. And you can easily defend these giganto armies. And look at this, that beautiful storm. Storm just as effective as it was in StarCraft 1. And by that I mean not quite as effective as it was in StarCraft 1, but totally ballin' nonetheless. And oh, Maka didn't notice. And of course the mules end up popping, and of course an Archon. How embarrassing to have the Archon come in there. Oh, poor thing. But again, this warp in, look at how much damage the energy upgrade gives to these Templar. The fact that he can do this drop and say, wow, I guess this is more vulnerable than I'd thought before. And then to just warp in more Templar. I mean, that is great. And a good old whoopsie-daisy-do. Always happens. And in the meantime, White-ra's gotten this expansion up. He's been mining gas, already taken about 500 gas from this location. Being a little bit bad on his chrono boost. And so what I want to note about this is that, isn't this cool that you can be as good as White-ra and still have room for improvement? Yeah, because too often players, I don't want to say idolize these super top of the line players like White-ra. Again, White-ra is a beast, won the HDH Invitational. Defeating Hydra 4-2 in the finals is no easy task whatsoever. He's a super beast. But too often players will look at White-ra and be like, I can never do that. You totally can do that, man. You can totally be like White-ra, and there's more room to improve. Isn't that awesome that there's more room to improve? Because what that means is that StarCraft still has plenty of time to develop as an esport. StarCraft II does. And oh, look at the nice storms. Look at some nice EMP dodging. One more thing I want to note. Thanks to this big concave, it's much harder to EMP all the Templar. You can just plant an OBS right there. And then see, there was one that went off in the back, but all it takes is 3 or 4 storms. And Terran is just in awful, awful position. Oh my god, and there's some nice sniping going on by those ghosts. Really need to get, oh my god, you need to get Cloak for Ghosts. Absolutely essential to get the Cloak for Ghosts. And of course we see more sniping action going on by those ghosts. But again, this warp-in is just brutal. And look at White-ra, did you see that? He was at 66 food to 100 food not long ago, and now he's pulled ahead thanks to that unbelievably sick harassment there. I mean, even going to the unit counting station, 22 SCVs to 48. And, I'm going to back up just to point this out. Look at Maka. He's pulling back. White-ra getting a little bit over-eager. He sees that he's in a good position. He comes back, and then look at this concave that Maka makes for himself. Look at that nice spread. Oh my god, that's so good. And just obliterates any chance of White-ra poking in there. Absolutely love that play by Maka. And of course the Hellions. One thing that's really nice about Hellions is that you can poke in because they're so much faster. You can snipe off probes, you can snipe off Templar, and if there's any units, you just back up until you regroup with your main army. Hellions, a very nice unit to have in these mixtures against Protoss. Very underused, and there's the stim, and oh my god, look at just great control by Maka, but ooh, he's getting low on health. And White-ra Warrior Storms manages to throw some off at the last second. But look at the Immortals, the real superheroes of this fight, managing to just hold down like heroes. Love White-ra's play there. I think this is very, very clever. You need to be much more efficient as time progresses in any of these intense situations, especially when you are low on bases. And the real key to that is, oopsie daisies, unplug my headphones, so hopefully you don't get any sort of outrageous feedback. And my headphones are back in. Yeah, you need to be very efficient with your unit-producing structures. So, you want to get the observers, you want to get the warp prisms, then just go ahead and begin constantly producing immortals out of them. And notice that while there was this huge battle coming up top, White-ra expanded to the bottom left. So brilliant. Very safe to expand all the way down there. And again, anytime you expo build a pylon. I've been doing this a lot, that, I'll build a pylon here so I can make some cannons, but then I build a pylon way here in the back so I can warp in Templar to come into the front. Because if you have a pylon like this, they'll generally run up, target it, and then you can't reinforce. Kind of cool to think about it like that, because, basically pylons are now the Nidus canals for Protoss. So a lot of target firing of those goes on by good players. And it looks like there is a camp going on here. They're going to be roasting s'mores or something. Don't know why all those units are over there. But in the meantime, look at this. Just warping in Zealots. Just straight up at the front. Warping in Zealots. Warping in more pylons. Look, Maka's expanding here to the right, but at the cost of his main command center. And it looks like these units that Maka saw, he just kind of went, oh my god, and then ran in there and is now trying to do a ton of damage, but can't really. Zealots are now sprinting up, just ripping through these Marauders in that charge that is oh so fun. Archon just holding down like a little boss. Not really doing much of anything, but pretty strong regardless. And Maka reloads up, and I really think that he neglected this sort of harass in the mid stages of the game. Once he got that huge army, he neglected the fact that he can just drop here, kill off assimilators, kill off probes if his opponent isn't careful. Here comes the big push, and oh my god, ouch, Jesus. Just sick drop tech going on there. And Maka, again, he does not have that much vision, is not keeping good job of spotting, is trying to wander up here with a lot of small forces. And this is cool to see these little small attack forces here for two reasons. First of all, it's effective. Notice that he's killing off a decent amount of stuff. But also because players are annoyed at these big mass army versus mass army battles that we see in Starcraft II. And this sort of harassment works out beautifully. There's actually more dropship action going on here by Maka. And look how much damage Maka has done with this little force, but White-ra, of course, holding down in beastly mode. Takes a small little force here, still has more stuff left here to defend. Is getting up this expansion now, has a pylon there for warp-ins. This is barely operational. And oh, Maka forgets to lift, and see you later, Command Center. God, what suave play by both these heroes. I mean, I am loving watching Maka play. I mean, wasn't this game awesome? It was just such insane back-and-forth action. I think it's pretty clear that Maka is in a less-than-good position at this point in time. I probably shouldn't talk like the game's already over, but hell, I do in my commentary. So, again, some Zealots coming here doing some damage, an Archon coming here and not really doing much of anything. Immortals, again, doing a nice, good cleanup. But there was some great back-and-forth action in there, and I really don't think it's because of huge mistakes by the players. Oh my god, good game by Maka. And look at White-ra, doesn't even have time to say GG because I guarantee you that man was fist-pumping like crazy. He edged out a 3-2 victory, barely, in that series. So I absolutely loved the fact that that game was back and forth, but not because of huge mistakes by the players, but because both players were forcing themselves back into it. On a map as crazy as Incineration Zone, too. Because, generally the smaller the map, and the more there's just funky, weird terrain, the more that it's like an inverted pendulum, that if it swings a little bit in your favor, then zhunk, you end up winning the game immediately. But there was just great abuse of terrain by Maka, trying to pick off those assimilators from the low ground, doing drops to remove any sort of spotting from the Protoss. I think that Maka could have even been more proactive, just checking along the rims there to see if there were any pylons, any expansions, any of that sort of jazz. A lot of awesome drops going on there as well. And White-ra, of course, holding down, using the concave. Cool to see the terrain really come into serious effect in that game, because I think many of you have probably heard me say this at the, if you've been watching me any amount, that I do think that terrain is not as important as I'd want it to be. Because, in StarCraft 1, if there's a little tiny ramp,